and and then so we can start. So I start by thanks for your time. First of all, thanks for taking these minutes to help us with this. This is everything. It's everything new. So it was an idea that we had to try and create a space that helps all the coaches and hopefully works as a bit of eye open for those who are starting, for those who are like you, work in community football, juniors, seniors. You are the first one. Hopefully we can get other people, other coaches, community coaches to come and share some ideas. But yeah, that's the plan. And to start, so I have a bit of a script, and if we go by the script, is obviously up to you, and depends on how the conversation will develop. I've got some personal questions, some coaching questions, some probably more challenging questions, or I call it out of comfort zone questions. They are not very very difficult, and I'm sure that that you won't find it difficult at all. And I would start, Richie, with a more personal question, which is if you could tell us a brief story about your football career, from player to coach, when you start loving sport, first clubs, and the following steps until you become a coach. I know that you had some time in Australia. That probably was a very rich experience for you as a player and probably as a coach, or thinking ahead as a coach. So if you could guide us a little bit about that for a minute or a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So it started out when I was 4 years old, joining the Thistle Football Club. My brother started playing. One of his mates from school joined. So I sat along there and watched, and got invited to chuck some boots on, and never really looked back. So I went right through till I must have been about 24, 25 when I went to Sydney. So I got over there and joined Banksy Tigers. And it was really, really good to have a whole different outlook on the game. Worked with some really good coaches over there that looked at the game completely differently, especially to what it was in Southland. And obviously we're quite limited and down here with our resources and where we go. It has developed more recently, but yeah, it was good to get that different view. I spent a bit of time, we played in a first team, reserve team sort of situation. And the first year I was there, I spent a lot of time in the reserve grade, and then sat on the bench and went in and played the first grade at sort of the end of the games. So I was lucky enough, the coach, he looked at the game differently, and he didn't mind me sort of hanging around and firing a few questions and asking why he was doing what he was doing. So that's sort of when the coaching side of it started coming along. I knew with a few injuries that I had previously, my days were definitely going to be limited. So it was going to be a track I'd go down. So yeah, started working alongside him. Whenever I come back home, I'd jump in at Thistle and run a few training sessions there and sort of dip my feet in the water. And yeah, come back and sort of took it on from there, and yeah, really, really enjoyed the coaching side since.
Thank you. You already answered my second question, which was when it was that sparkled that passion and desire to coach. So I reckon it was probably there when you felt it the first time.
Yeah.
How did that opportunity pop up to go to Australia?
My partner at the time was Australian, so she had come out here for a few years, and then we're always going to go over to Sydney. So part of me going over there was getting straight into football. For me, it's always been a Saturday event. All of my mates have come through football, and I've still got some very good mates in Australia through that as well. So for me, it was definitely key to actually get in there, get involved in a team, make some friends, and that sort of, no matter where you are in the world, that gives you normality. So from there, and yeah, just run with it from that. So
you probably touched this in your introduction. This question is not on the script, but I was just thinking, back in the day when you went to Australia and when you experienced football over there, did you notice this was what, 10, 15 years ago, maybe?
No, it would have been 2012, first year over there.
Oh yeah, so
sort of 2012 to 2016.
Back in the day, did you feel any particular difference between the coaching in Australia and the coaching in New Zealand on that time in 2012, or the things were pretty similar?
things that were probably a bit more technical. When I was here, I was playing Donald Gray, and prior to going, I made a couple of games for the Southern men's team in the Southern Premier League. So the coaching was sort of more to obviously the Southern Premier League standard. We were sort of playing to that level over there, so it was a bit more technical, a bit more sort of thorough in what we were doing. But yeah, it was just such a different outlook, such a different way to see the game and be involved in it.
Cool. Next question is, all coaches, I guess, regardless the number of seasons they've been coaching, they've been coaching for, they have at least one moment, if not more, but at least that moment they keep in their memory for good reasons. What's your most memorable moment so far as a coach?
There's probably two moments, but they link together. We played, it might have even been last year, we played Old Boys, and we were all over them right through the first half of the game. Should have been 3 or 4 up. And right before halftime, they managed to score 2 goals in 2 minutes, identical goals. We made the same mistakes. And I went into halftime and I pretty much lost my rag and told the players what I thought and what we needed to do. And we went out and didn't do any better, funny enough, and copped a few more goals. And it was quite a major learning curve. Part of being a coach or a manager is actually managing yourself. So I put my hand up with the boys and apologised for that and took that one on the chin. But then later in that season, we played Queen's Park and they put a couple of balls in behind our back line early on. They were 2-0 up within 10 minutes. And we competed with them for the rest of the game. We were sort of even, but we had the ability to go more. So I went into the change rooms there and I took a completely different approach. I was quite calm and collected and knew what I wanted to get across to the guys. And we walked out in the second half and put 7 goals in. So for me, it was just such a major learning curve on how to actually manage not the players, but actually yourself, and try and get the best out of them. So yeah, that's sort of one that always sits in there.
Cool. You answered 2 questions in one. I was going to ask you what's the biggest disappointment. So you touch both, which is good.
Yeah.
In the same space, coaching at the community level, and obviously I've coached in Southland, and even coaching Southland United is still community level. It's still, obviously we probably have to invest a bit more time, a bit more money and resources, but it's still community level. You deal a lot with the same challenges, and coaching the community level is exactly that. It means dealing with challenges on a daily basis. Those types of challenges that you can't even anticipate sometimes. And for example, you have to adapt to the training session 2 minutes before, or like. What is your biggest challenge, or what are your biggest challenges as a coach at the community level, especially in the last couple of years that you've coached Donald Gray?
Probably my biggest challenge is, for the first few years, it was pretty much me. The first year I really took on the coaching role, I had Ian Edwards, and that was part of the deal. I was sort of a player coach, so he worked with me and did the sideline thing. The couple of years after that, it was pretty much me, but I was doing the Donald Gray and the Division 1. So you found yourself stretched all the time. You either had 10 players at training you couldn't do anything with, or you'd have 27. And then it comes down to equipment and space and time and trying to actually make sure that you've got players on different levels and trying to sort of stretch across and do the lot of them. And then it would even come into game days where you go set the Div 1 boys up, you're there for half a game and then you're gone and you've got to go and sort out your other team. So it was probably being stretched was sort of the huge challenge in that. This year and last year I've had Graham Robertson, Carl Hawkes and my brother Craig definitely chime up and chip in. Keith Hawkes jumped on board when I needed him to and took teams and definitely nurtured through that Division 1 side, which has allowed me to focus more on the Donald Gray side, which then obviously you can actually put that commitment into your players and hopefully to develop the game a bit better.
It's really good that you have that awareness, and you start by saying that your biggest challenge was yourself, and I find it really interesting because um, I think it's actually the most important thing to take the next step as a coach is actually being aware of our strengths and weaknesses, and until we realize that and what we can do and being adaptable, we can't go any further. You mentioned something about your first year when you were sharing responsibilities with Ian. How did you find that period in terms of good points and bad points of sharing responsibilities with others? I think I've been part of that year as well, but obviously I wasn't always at training, and I know that sometimes in terms of leadership that can cause a little bit of uncertainty. How do you see that?
I only had positives to take out of it. It was my first year coaching, and like I said, I had to have someone there with me. So, player coach is such a challenge. You've got so much to do on the field yourself, let alone trying to organise guys to make sure they're still warm on the sideline and look at substitutions and even try and read the game. That's half the challenge of the coach, is actually trying to figure out what's happening on the field so you can tweak things. And it's so hard to do from either the front or the back of the field or wherever you are. So having in there definitely helped, and for anyone that's played alongside me or against me, they know I'm reasonably passionate. So having someone there actually telling me what to do on the field was quite good as well. I think all the teammates are pretty happy with that one. But getting into it, it was also a good chance for me to throw ideas to someone, get some feedback right there on the training pitch. What do you think of this? And it'd be a good idea, and we'd run with it, and he'd throw a few tweaks on it, and then we could sort of evolve the drills and the sessions and what we wanted to do. So if you're getting into it and you get someone with experience, definitely take them on. I think it was definitely the best thing to get me going.
That's good. One last question on this more personal side. I was going to ask, when did your connection with Thistle start? You already answer. You said it was through your brother who started playing there. And how did you become a Thistle coach? You probably already answered, but when that invitation came, I mean, someone invited. Did you put your hand up? Did you feel you were ready and you said, "Look, guys, I'm here"? I know that in a place where coaches are just not everywhere available to coach a great team or whatever the level is, it's probably not a difficult thing to happen. But I'm just wondering if there's a story behind.
Not really. Like I said, when I was in Australia, I did a bit of sort of learning over there, and when I come back, I ran a few sessions. Josh Collins was running the team then, so he was more than happy for me to come in and throw some different drills and different ideas, and he would take them on as well and adapt them. And when I come back 4 or 5 months later, there'd be a few tweaks and keep going. I got back, I got on the field, I played 90 minutes, went out the second week and got on the field for 20 minutes and wound up on crutches. So that was the season done. So yeah, nice. Yeah, thanks for smiling there. So I sort of jumped on the assistant coaching with him then, sort of threw a few ideas around, even with our women's team. Quite often the coaches couldn't make trainings or games, so I'd pop down there on crutches and chuck a few cones down and set up a few drills there. So I sort of just threw my feet out there and said, I'll jump in wherever you need me, junior team, whatever. And then I think sort of the end of it, Josh was pretty happy to step aside and say, well, we need to do something different. We need to change. And yeah, was definitely happy to hand the reins over and let me go for it. So.
Cool. All right. So now getting a little bit into more into the coaching side of things. This is probably a bit more challenging. You probably had some moments to reflect about this over the last couple of years. How do you describe your type of leadership? I can give you here a couple of topics for you to develop on. What's your relationship with the players? What sort of relationship do you have with the players? If it's closer one, or if you prefer the distance and to get a bit more respect, doesn't really mean that you're going to get it, or the other way around.
Yeah, my approach. like I said, I was a player coach to start with. Most of the team that I started coaching, I've been good mates with for years, played alongside for years. And what sort of got me through in the first part was my attitude on the field when I did play. It was all out there, nothing left in the tank. You give everything for your teammate. And the guys knew that. And if I was out there, if I could still play, I'd be doing it. So when it come to trainings, when it come to games, and the expectation for them to do that, they knew that I wasn't some guy that was just telling them to run harder or run faster. I had the ability to do it on the field as well. So they really brought into what I wanted to do, and they wanted to change. And then as we kept that core side and those senior players, whenever we had new players come in, they dragged them along up to the level that we needed. So they could let me put my expectation on it, and then they'll pull the players through. And then that allowed me to go into actually doing the coaching side, and whether it's pulling players aside one-on-one to tweak their game or give them a few pointers on what we want to do and how we want to work with them into the team. It was quite a good sort of team effort from our sort of whole leadership side of it to get that working properly.
Another question that's not on the script, but just developing a little bit of what you just said. Comparing both seasons, especially the first season, where you act a little bit as a player coach or for that specific part, and then when you were just focusing on coaching, did you find the first one particularly challenging because you had to? I always had a little bit of found it difficult to coach and play, not just because of the leadership part, only because you have to manage. It's about management, so you have to run session and sometimes you have to participate as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any strategy, or did you have at the time any strategies to deal with that and make it not as overwhelming?
Not really at the time, because I was sort of still new in it. I was still finding the feet on certain aspects. So a lot of it was just curveballs getting thrown at you and running with it on the fly. And then as you sort of went through those processes and you knew what you're up for and how you needed to develop. Like you would have been through training sessions where you set up for 20 guys and you get 14 turn up and everything goes out the window, or vice versa. You get an extra 10 guys and all of a sudden everything changes. So once you get your head around that, you've basically just got to set sessions up that can move drastically quite quickly. And yeah, that's sort of how I even today I approach sessions, and you always have a rough number, but yeah, it varies so much that you've just got to run with the fly. Yeah.
Right. In your opinion, what's that one coaching skill you think it makes the difference when coaching a senior team at community level?
One that makes a difference. It's a tricky one there.
I know you can have all the knowledge, but then you don't have.
Yeah.
You can have the relationship, and sometimes you struggle on other areas. Is there any coaching skill from knowledge, tactical knowledge, technical? You already touched some of them. The leadership, I don't know, the resilience that you think it's important to coach at the community level, because the challenges between community level and obviously performance level are completely different. And
Yeah.
if you think there's any skill that stands out when we are talking about coaching at this level?
I think probably the skill, and it's probably been able to coach at a range. Like if you take obviously yourself and the Southland team, you've got players that are at a certain level. Where you take myself coaching Donald Graded Div 1, you've got such a variety. You've got from 35-year-olds to 14-year-olds. You've got guys that have been there, done that. They'll tell you how to do it, to guys that still need to work on throw-ins. So it's such a range. You've got to be able to be extremely flexible. And like I said, when you had those first couple of years where you're by yourself, that was a massive challenge in it. So it's the key to it is to get the support network around you. And if you can do that, then you can actually apply a lot better to your players.
I agree with you. It's I used to think even when I was training, I used to think, and actually I think I mentioned in the office a couple of times that it requires a lot of flexibility to be able to adapt to so many different levels. We're not just talking about the level of the players, about the age of the players. We're talking about personalities as well. That's regardless the level, the different personalities are always there. But then having to juggle personalities, technical ability, age, fitness, all these different things. It's a job. It's a hell of a job, and doing a great job with that. And I know that, and I think the community knows that as well. So well done on that. Just to before we get into training, would you like to share with us what's Thistle's philosophy as a club, and how you align that with the club to pass that philosophy on to the players, if there's a moment for that at some point in the season, or every time we have new players, and how you reset the things.
Philosophy wise, we like to be family based. It's all around that. It's about making sure that come game day, your partners, your wives, your kids all come down. They're all part of it. They're welcome to the sideline. Making sure, especially our senior players, know everyone that comes down to our grounds to watch, whether it be our life members, older players, women's team. Trying to actually get that seniority to take a leadership role right across the entire club. And we definitely try and push that the whole way down through the junior grades, to the point, I remember growing up right through the day, you always knew who the coach was, you always knew who the starting players were. And as a wee nipper, you're always sort of hanging around trying to annoy them, which I was probably reasonably successful at. But it's trying to get that culture into the young players coming through to buy straight into the senior environment. And it's been good the last couple of years, having sort of the 14, 15-year-olds coming through. And the next part of that is we've got, I think there's 5 or 6 of my senior team coaching in juniors as well. So they've instantly got that buy-in into the senior grades. They know people there straight away. So the more we can actually, get right across our club and get the seniors involved in the juniors and vice versa, it definitely gets that foundation and that buy-in into what we're trying to do as a whole club there.
I noticed, especially last season, I think it became way more visible last year. The involvement of the senior team, maybe the Donald Gray squad, with the juniors on Saturday mornings, and my question is, did that came from you? Did you just came up with the idea? Did you pretty much I don't say forced, but did you suggest that to the guys and say, look guys, it's important for this to happen? It's part of our philosophy to get our juniors to feel that we are here and who we are.
No, I definitely wouldn't say forced. We've always had the likes of Ali Smith and Dylan Meehan around the sort of coaching sides. We've had a couple other players, Scott Henderson and Matthew McDowell, in the last year or so come to us saying, we want to help coach a team. So we had them approaching us wanting to do it. We've always, like I said, as a senior side, we've always tried to encourage them to get down to the junior fields. If they want to come grab their club jackets or wear their shirts and ties or whatever they want, get down there, be seen. It's never forced. So I think the only time we actually probably force it is we do the away trip to Gore every now and then. So what we'll do is we'll get the guys there early. Generally would send the Division 1 side away in one van, and the DG guys would go up to one of our junior teams, turn up to the sidelines, and would have the whole team there for a full junior game. We'll just pick whatever side sort of lines up with our timeline, and get out there and definitely be vocal and be heard and go and join in on the halftime talk and shake hands with all the players, both sides at the end of the field, and that's sort of their one big obligation of the year. But aside from that, most of them are actually pretty good, whether they've got young kids or whether they just feel the need to actually be seen and be part of the club and be proud of it.
Now, getting a little bit into the training area, how would you describe your playing style? So how do you want your team to play? I know this is quite tricky. You might want something and for some reason didn't happen or doesn't happen this year because you don't have the players, or I don't know. But how would you describe your playing style? The things, what's in your head?
Back to basics. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. Do the little things and do them right. Like I said, like the skill level between Division 1 and Donald Gray is quite different. The skill level between the bottom of Donald Gray and the top of Donald Gray is still quite large. So end of the day, it's a team sport, and you've got to work with what you've got as a team. So if we can get the whole team doing the little things right, get your ball speed up, open your body before you receive it so the ball can travel quicker, and hammer the guys on communication all the time. Not talking on the field, that's half the battle lost. So it really is just drumming and doing the little things right. And from year to year, we try and start at A and go to B, and then the following year we'll go from B to C and just step it up that way. It's not reinventing the wheel at all. It's just sort of refining the simple side of it.
A challenge that from season to season, when you lose, I don't know, when you lose a handful of players, and that might have happened, for example, this season. Is it a challenge that you have to go back to things that you visited way ago and do it again?
Yeah, the first couple of seasons we had sort of quite wholesale changes. A lot of guys who'd sort of been there, done that, were happy to drop down the grades. But at the same time, we were doing the right things with the club to attract new players to the teams. So over this first couple of years, by the second year, I would have had all but an entire new DG side. So the first few years were literally going A to B and then A to B again and then A to B again. From that, we've kept the core. I think in the last couple of years, we've probably had maybe 2, maybe 3 players in or out. And the ones we've lost have gone up the country somewhere. So the easy side of that is you can carry on going forward with your process, and you can just spend a little bit of time on those couple of players individually, do a wee bit more work with them to catch them up. It's a lot quicker, a lot easier. And because the rest of your team's playing how you want them to, they'll quickly pull into line and get the idea. So over the last few seasons, it's definitely been a lot easier to develop and sort of press on with what we want to do and where we want to go. But yeah, those first couple of years were sort of Groundhog Day a bit.
This is another that is not on the script, but using what you said, and obviously I think it's clear that last season, performance-wise, Thistle was above the 2 or 3 seasons before in terms of performance. The table proves that. You put it up to what exactly? What you think was the reason for that, for the better performance, the better results?
I think part of it is just what I said. It was keeping that same team and actually being able to develop them. A lot of it, we introduced a bit of a leadership group, and they started putting, I'll use the word pressure, but I'll use it quite delicately, pressure on other players to make sure they train, they commit to what we're doing as a team, and they buy into the whole system. And it was sort of drawing that line at the start of the season, is this is what we want to do, and this is how we want to do it. And if basically you want to go out and play your own game, you'll sit on the bench and watch us do it our way. So we got that, and right across the board, we had 15 or 16 guys that were very capable of doing the job, and started pushing each other for positions. So if they weren't performing, we definitely had someone else ready to step into the spot, and that put it straight back on the training ground of better trainings, more efficient. and it comes out on Saturday.
You'll be able to share with us some examples of how that leadership group operates. What exactly do they do, or is it a secret and you prefer not to?
Um, it's not major things. It's like I generally get to training early, try and set everything up, and have the whole session set out. So while I'm doing that, they'll get the guys and they'll do the warm up. They'll start all that. We'll got a first couple of basic drills that we'll get into. So I could go the first 15, 20 minutes of a session without actually having to do anything to start with. And it doesn't matter if there's one of them there or all of them there, they'll do it. We get into the fitness right at the start of the year, and they're the guys that will drag someone on a lap and say, right, you're with me for the next 2 legs, and start pushing these guys and start sort of requesting more out of them. And even to the point of getting the younger players into the team. You'll find out whenever the younger guys come in, you'll get 4 or 5 of them, and everyone will warm up in one area and they'll be kicking the ball around together. So they'll be straight over there and say, right, come over here, join in with us, and actually get them involved in the squad right from day one. So yeah, it's puts that culture right through the team straight away. So there's no major secrets to it. It's just having the right guys doing the right things.
I think that's really good stuff, and that's a way to share responsibilities, and especially in environments where sometimes we are alone. And when I say we are alone, we have lots of people supporting, but on the pitch when we're training, sometimes we don't have assistant coach, and it's a good way to get someone to share responsibilities with. Usually those people, they are natural leaders in some capacities, and they don't mind, and we get some help. So well done on that as well. Do you have, in terms of training, do you have any routines that you consider important for you since you start coaching? Talking about, imagine, planning sessions, review sessions, whatever. Any particular things that you do, even in terms of exercises that you do, the way you structure the session, things that work well for you, that you have been building, sort of a strategies portfolio that have been working well for you.
My sort of strategy is, like I said, I've got an A and a B where I want to get through for the year, and you can sort of break that down into 6 or 8 different categories and different stages. So I might put that category over 4 training sessions. So you start with a little part of it, and then each session you evolve it and you develop another aspect of it. And I really try and push the players to actually think of what I'm trying to get them to do without having to tell them. And an easy example on that is you can get a 40-meter wide field by 20 meters long and stick a couple of goals in it. So you've got width, but it's quite shallow. And you set up a field next to it that's 40 by 20, but the goals go the other way. So it's narrow and long. So you set up 4 different teams and put 2 in each field, and away they go. And it's very, very quickly that once a team gets off the wide field and get onto the long field, they go, we played that whole last one right through the middle. So they've condensed the entire field themselves. They haven't actually looked at the other field and how that's set up, going, we're probably going to go in there, and that's one we're going to have to play condensed through the middle. And that might be something, depending on who we're playing that weekend, if we need to play wide, or whether we know we have to going to play through the middle of the field and condense things up. Yep. So it's like, that's a very, very basic form of it, but it's trying to get the players to actually realise, right, this is short but wide, so let's open that field up, let's make it bigger. So it's not groundbreaking things, it's just trying to, at the end of the day, the more the players can figure out themselves, the easier it is for them to buy in and understand it.
And at the same time, it's also setting up the environment for them to think yep. their own. So you set up the environment, you set up the scenarios, and they have to come up with a solution. Yep. So, and after the sessions, do you have any routines? Do you think about, do you usually review the session? When I say review, it's not necessarily sitting on the desk, sitting in front of the computer or taking notes and making a big book about that. But do you, sometimes I remember when I was coaching, and it's quite a habit that it's not planned, but it's something that happens, is after the session or the day after, we think, well, this went well, this didn't go so well. Do you have any strategies to think about what you've done the session before?
A few years ago, it was a little bit easier. I was in a bit of a cruisier role at work, so I could do my job and start sort of thinking football quite a bit. So during that, your mind would just drift away to what you've done and what went well and what didn't, what we need to tweak, or like I said, if you're going through that sort of 4-stage development, what the next stage is, and are we ready for that, or do we need to sort of feather into that? Bit busier at work now, so it's a bit harder to sort of get that time to get the mind working. But like I think the big key for that is actually having the year planned. If you can start there, you know where you're starting, you know where you're finishing, and if you get a little bit behind somewhere, can we pick up the pace and skip through the next lot and get the guys to work a little harder and pick it up a bit quicker. But yeah, you've definitely got to look back at your session and figure out, like, some days they don't work, they're just terrible. And other days they're brilliant, they're works of art. So
yeah, and those are all points that we have to consider at the community level. I had another question in this topic. I will still ask it, but I already got something from what you said before. So this is really important what you're saying, because I think it's common. It's very common across the region. So people have their jobs, they do this service at training, and probably they don't have the time to. Unless they have some extra time for some surprising reason, they probably don't have the time to go and reflect, review the session. But my question would be, how important is the players' feedback to what you're going to do next? I mean, it's something that is not very common, but sometimes I hear from different coaches and different sports, and it's becoming, I think, maybe because of the new generation of players, younger players who are coming through and are probably more used to that, and then they almost demand that to the new coaches, to the senior coaches. Do you get feedback from your players, and how you use it towards your next session, if that's the case?
I definitely do with that leadership group. We've got a Facebook Messenger chat that is always open, and after each session there's always information fired back and forward, and it's a pretty open forum. We generally, if someone else has talked to them about something good or something bad, and we can bring that up and discuss it and bring it into what we want to do, or whether we need to bring it in. I'd like to think I have a reasonably good relationship with most of the players, where if they feel that they need to work on something, or there's something that they're missing in their game, where we can actually bring it up and either put into a session, or we can sort out some one-on-one time and go and work with them individually. It's one of those tricky ones. If, like, when we're into the season, we're training once a week, so we might do a Monday night gym session or something like that, but you've only got the one day on the turf. So it really is making sure that you're utilising that time to get across what you need to get across, and that's where that one-on-one time or sending someone away with individual drills definitely sort of helps them out with what they need individually.
Cool, thanks for that. Last question in the training side. You must have a specific criteria for this, so I would ask, how do you pick your starting 11 for each game? Based on what criteria? Because I understand that, each one of the local clubs must have different challenges. Sometimes commitments, more important commitments, come before training, and important players miss important sessions, and sometimes you don't always get what you want or what you plan. So how do you manage this?
It's definitely a tricky one. Like, availability is huge. You get guys that do shift work and available here and there, and it's always a tricky one. They may be good enough to start week in, week out, but if they've been tied up at work and you've had other guys training, that's definitely where your management skills come into it. A lot of it comes down to training and attendance. We run all ads through an app, so something pops up on your phone and says, training's this time, can you attend, yes or no? So the good thing is the entire team can see who's going to be there or who isn't. And it's a pretty simple way to turn around and say, well, you didn't have the decency to say you're not even training, so sorry mate, you're on the bench, or you're down the grade. So that's a good tool that the players can see it, so that puts sort of the emphasis on it. The players, end of the day, they pay money to play football, so you can't turn around and say you need to prioritise this over something else. So it is definitely a balancing act, but come game day, if we want to be competitive, it comes down to who's going to fit the game plan. Some people are stronger against other teams, and some people need to work on certain aspects. So Donald Gray, we're out there to win. So it's making sure that I put out an 11 that's going to do that, and the way that I manage it is I make that abundantly clear at the very start of the season that, end of the day, the coach, the club's given me the role, and I'll do my best by the players. But if you've got complaints, go back to the club. I need to do what I need to do to get results. So.
I knew this before because you had the chance to share with me, I think maybe a couple of months ago, about the app that you're using to keep the players engaged. Do you want to share the name of the app, just if some other coaches want to use it?
Yeah, the app's called Teamer. So we use it right across our club, all our senior grades at the moment. So if you're having club events or something, you can put it up right across the whole club. It's got all the information, and it's pretty simple. You send out notifications and it literally comes up, says accept or decline. So for game days, availabilities, it's got meeting times, all that side of it. So yeah, we communicate 95% of what we need to through that across the club, and it makes life a lot easier.
Give me just a second just to plug my laptop. It's running out of battery.
One job, eh?
I don't know where the plug is. Well, I can't find it. Let's go. I'll find it shortly. Getting into the game. That's my next question. Do you plan your games? You probably already, I think picking the starting 11 is probably part of that as well. But do you plan your games? And if you do, why do you do it? Like if you plan team talks, if you think about what you're going to say in the pre-match talk or halftime talk. Halftime talk is a bit different because obviously you're going to talk about the game and you can't predict what's going to happen. But if you plan substitutions, for example, if you think when you're going to put this guy on and why.
End of the day, at this level, not too much changes from week to week. Like we don't have bloody hours and hours of film footage to watch and the time to do it, to actually analyse other teams and what they're doing and how they're doing things. So a lot of our focus is around what we want to do and how we want to play the game. Like last year we played most teams 4 or 5, got 5 times. So you've got an idea of what they're going to do, what team they're going to put out and how they're going to play. So it comes down to who's actually going to execute the game plan better as who's going to get the result at the end of the day. There may be a specific player or a couple of players under the team that we want to identify that these are going to be their key men, and it might be someone's tasked with one-on-one marking there, or how we want to sort of nullify them out of the game or keep the ball away from that area. But apart from that, it's very much focused on ourselves. I touched on earlier about the halftime. It's really key to sort of keep your emotions in check. I think Gene from Gore's got that one dialed down. He's come out after halftime and put quite a few goals past us to turn games around. So if you want to know about halftime talks, I'd fire questions at him. I'm pretty keen to find out what he does actually. But yeah, it's all about making sure that you're encouraging what your players are doing right. I think that's a big key that I've found. They're not professional players. They're doing their best. They turn up for the love of the game, and you've got to make sure it's enjoyable start to finish for them.
Thanks for that, Richie.
You find your plug?
I found. We
Good
could
man.
could be here for another hour, but we're coming to the last part of it. We are already off the schedule for 10 minutes because the chat is good. Um, I have a few more questions, but probably I won't do them all. But these are those out of comfort zone questions. Probably some more than others, but I guess they will force you to think a bit more about it. The first one, I think, is the easiest. Is based on your experience as a player in Southland, out of Southland, and then as a coach. You obviously touched a few coaching approaches and styles and methodologies, whatever. What's the biggest difference in terms of approach between what you see today, between what you are today, and what you had in the past? For example, when you were a junior footballer, probably not very young, but when you were a teenager, and then in Australia, and in Australia was in 2012, so probably the difference wasn't that much. But yeah. What's the biggest difference between between coaching when you were a teenager and now?
I think the biggest one was probably numbers. Like even in Sydney, go back 8 years, there was 2,000 people in my club. So if you weren't going to turn up and weren't going to perform for the top team, they'll just find someone else. It was that whole people wanted to be there, so you had to work harder. I remember back as a probably 11 or 12-year-old nipper turning up to senior men's trainings for Thistle. You couldn't get in the changing rooms. There was probably 6 or 7 different teams training. There were people everywhere. And I wasn't allowed to play on the game's end because they were probably more physical than they were on Saturdays because people wanted starting spots. Where now, where obviously our numbers aren't as great as they can be, and I know you guys are working pretty hard to try and grow that, and all the clubs are definitely putting the feelers out to try and get more people involved in the game. But end of the day, if you've got 15 guys capable of playing at that level, then you've got 15 to choose from. If you've got 40, it's a lot easier to push players a lot harder.
Using what you said just before, you probably noticed that over the last year, especially maybe the last couple of years, we shift to a more. This probably has probably before that, pretty much since I'm in New Zealand, which is probably 5 years now. We start slowly turning the coaching approach for a more player-centered approach. So I feel since comparing the time I was a player or I was a young player, and now there is much more. How can I say this? Maybe you have more concern about the needs of the players, the individual needs of each player, the way they think. Do you think that's influenced by the numbers as well, or you just think that's influenced by the amount of information that is now available that allows us to think different?
I think it's probably a combination of both. I had someone turn up one day and wanted me to teach them how to do a knuckleball when they were shooting. Can't do one myself. I'm not going to teach you, but they'd gone and watched a YouTube video and decided that they wanted to do that. So that's sort of the extreme end of the coaching side. That's quite technical and quite individual. So, I think obviously with the player numbers, they'll feel like there's a lot more time for them. There's not 40 people going for the one team, so they can work on their skills. And end of the day, if you're a decent coach and you want to help the game, you'll do what you can where you can. Like I said, if right across summer, if guys want to come in and bloody come to my place and grab a bag of balls and go kick them out, not an issue. If they want me to come along and teach them something or work on a certain aspect of the game, that's what you do. But I think it's a good thing, players wanting to do that. They've just got to be probably within their limits on what they want to learn.
Well, next question. This one is pretty straightforward. Would you ever coach another Southland club?
No. Pretty simple.
Born
and blue.
And if you had, imagine that today you had 50K to spend in the next 24 hours for your coaching or your team, how would you spend that money?
I'd take them all to Anfield, go watch Liverpool.
Now you could always spend with your team or with your well, you say, look, I would go to Anfield to learn something from Klopp or
yeah, right. God, that's a tricky one, isn't it? What would you do with 50 grand? Get a payroll going. I don't know. No, God, I've never even thought along those lines because it's never actually been something that's sort of remote possible, is it?
Yeah. But anyway, and the second last question is another challenging one. If you could sign any active player from one of the other Donald Gray teams,
ooh, God, who would I go after? That's a tricky one. Well, I don't, as a coach, sort of focus on other players. I just sort of intend to look at the ones I've got. There are some good players out there, though. I know Dylan Mann and Lewis McLaren are getting older, so I could look at replacing those guys. Yeah, no, I'd only offend people if I said someone's name.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's respectful. And the last one. What's your ultimate dream as a coach?
Probably to have their club in a healthy place when someone else takes over. To make sure that it doesn't need built up again, or all that groundwork sustained, and a structure and a stable platforms definitely put there and solid. It's a lot of work going from sort of revolving teams and trying to build up players and get that respect in the club back to get good players. So if we can maintain that level and keep guys interested and keep new guys coming in, then the day I step aside and someone else takes over, then it's there for them to pick up and run with.
Good stuff. Well, that's enough questions for today. I wanted to. I was going to invite you to finish with a message. If you could give any sort of message to our junior coaches or those who are just starting their coaching careers now, if you could leave a message to them, something that you think would be a good advice or a good message.
If you're starting out, definitely get involved with someone that's got a bit of experience. At our junior club, we generally run 2 coaches to a team. So if someone new wants to come along, they can pair up with someone senior, and hopefully a couple of years later they can take a team themselves and take someone else under their wing. But don't be afraid to ask questions. End of the day, we're all trying to grow the sport. We're all trying to get the competition and the quality up, get more players active. So it doesn't matter what club you're at. If you want to come and quiz my mind on drills or what's working and what isn't, just approach me. And I say that across the board for probably most senior coaches or Luis and Nacho at Southland Football. Like I've touched on it, it's really hard to do a couple of teams by yourself or not have enough coaches around. So end of the day, if you're keen and you got questions, just ask and we'll all be more than happy to come and help you.
Thank you very much for that. And Richie, just to finalize, look, I want to thank you a lot for giving your time away to be here with us tonight, to share lots of good experiences, good knowledge with whoever is going to watch the video. It's a shame that we couldn't go live, because if we go live, we could have had some live questions, hopefully, and probably some of them more challenging than mine.
It would have been won a war, I guarantee you.
So yeah, look, thank you very much on behalf of Scotland Football.
Not a problem at all.
We wish you the best for the season, and it won't be long until we see each other. Hopefully, we can catch up soon, and hopefully, we can get the season started within the next couple of weeks or ish. Yeah, look, have a good night, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.